Hey there, and welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show, where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with building cohesive, vision-driven teams. I am Casey Watts, school impact strategist and the host of this show. Now, if you are here, then you inevitably are an instructional leader who wants to make change happen, even when change seems impossible. And you can do that if you have cohesive, vision-driven teams that have done clarity work. They know exactly where they're headed and how they're going to get there. These teams have done identity work, and they've built their self and social awareness skills. And they have done collaboration work, and they know how to move beyond faux collaboration to get to true collaboration where change happens and where people get on board. I'm so excited to bring to you conversations that help you to do exactly that. The work that needs to be done to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to another conversation with me. I am excited to talk tonight about a really hot topic, which is how to make change happen when change seems impossible. And we're specifically going to be thinking about just one place you can start. Because here's the reality. The reality is that it can feel extremely impossible, right? It can feel like you're going nowhere fast. Now, there are a couple of things I want to talk to you about tonight. Definitely one place you can start when you feel like change feels impossible, but I do have to take just a moment at the beginning of this episode to pay tribute to an officer who has a school officer who has passed away. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a moment of silence. And if you are a praying person, I would love for you to pray for this man who has passed, his family, the teachers that are going to be experiencing heartache in the coming days. Truly, there are not enough words that I can say about this man who tragically passed. And I just felt like it was right and appropriate to have a brief moment of silence. So I'm going to add a picture of him here. His name is Brian Hawley. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a moment. Now, if you have any officers at your school who bring light and joy and energy and positivity to your district, you know exactly the heartache that we're experiencing. He was someone who just loved everyone. You felt like he'd known you for years, and you always felt like you were someone he truly cared about and wanted to engage with every day. Always had a smile on his face, always joking, always put the kids at his top priority, and he will be deeply missed. And I so appreciate you allowing me to take just a moment of silence to pay tribute to this wonderful man. So let's dig into tonight's topic. I was listening to some colleagues share about change in their schools. I was listening to some people who came to a coaching session on Saturday, which was just yesterday, which is crazy to me. But they came to a coaching session just yesterday to think about how to roll out new programs or curriculum. And I just want to share with you some of the things that I've noticed in some of these different conversations. And if these statements are statements that resonate with you, that you feel like you have heard these before or you have said them yourself, I want you to put a yes in the chat. Okay. So if you are hearing anything that's like, yep, absolutely, I've heard it and I have said it, put yes in the chat. So I've heard people say, I feel like no one wants to make any changes, right? Or I feel like people just want to do what they've always done because it's comfortable. Put a yes in the chat if you've heard that or you've said that. No one wants to buy in because they think it's too much work. Why do I feel like we take 2 steps forward and 10 steps back? Or you might be thinking, especially if you were an instructional coach, I feel like I'm a nobody when it comes to leading people to get on board. Sometimes you might think there are too many problems. I don't even know where to start. Or, there's too much negative talk about this new whatever, right? Change can feel impossible. It can also feel as though our teachers don't ever want to change, or they're like, there's an excuse. Or it can also feel like you are overwhelmed and you know that your overwhelm is minimal in comparison to theirs. And there are 2 different kinds of overwhelm that are happening there. But that's what we're talking about tonight. Tonight, we're talking about how do we start with just something, even when it feels impossible to move forward. So let me share with you, before I tell you that's something that we're going to talk about, that one place you can start, let me share this graphic with you. Now, this graphic is something that I have shared time and again with staff and teachers when trying to implement something that is a change truly, or that is new, because if anything new in education is going to require a change. Any new thing in your school requires change. The true fact is that we are in the business as instructional leaders of change management. So let's think about what that looks like when we're going through change. I want to show you this graphic that has the quote, "Everything can look like failure in the middle." And this quote, actually, I read about this in the book, Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard. And they quote some of the work of Tim Brown, who is the CEO or was the CEO of IDEO. And here's what this Tim Brown says about change. He says, every design process or every state of change that we go through goes through a foggy period, okay? And then they thought about taking this foggy period and mapping it out in like this U-shaped graphic. So if you're looking at this U-shaped graphic, you'll notice that everyone kind of can start at the point of feeling hopeful about what's to come, about this change. But pretty quickly, we're going to go through this valley, through the trenches, in order to build up to confidence where we've had and experienced positive things that make us feel confident about this change. That valley is known as insight. I kind of think about Brene Brown's words. It's the suck of things, right? It's that valley where things are just going to be really hard, but we cannot gain confidence and build mastery experiences until we've gone through the valley and through the trenches and through the suck of it all, right? So we have this valley that we're going through in order to get to confidence. The problem is that when you are trying to make change happen as an instructional leader, it can feel like you're in that valley for a long period of time and you're never moving past it to the point of confidence. So we're going to be focusing tonight on just that valley. We're going to be focusing on the valley of insight. And that's what I want to tell you, the places that you are going to try to start when change feels impossible, okay? And there are 2 types of insight we're going to be thinking about. We're going to be thinking about the insight from the perspective of the leader who's trying to make change happen. And we're going to think about the insight of those who are experiencing the change that they feel like is almost happening to them instead of with them, right? And so often that's how teachers feel. They feel like things are being done to them instead of with and for them. So how do we shift that? Well, let's talk about how we shift that. The very first thing that I want to say to you before we move on is that change is a process, right? And we all know that change is absolutely a process. And I want to read a quote from this same book, Switch, where Chip and Dan Heath say change isn't an event, it is a process. Our teachers feel almost like it is an event because they are feeling as though it is something done to them, right? And at the beginning of the year, or it really could be any time of the year, when there is something that you are trying to implement and you know that it is a change and it's going to require a change on their part, it feels like an event that is happening instead of a process of things. Now, if you were to attend the Clarity Cycle Mastermind that I'm going to be opening up next week, I'm going to have a fall cohort to help you understand how to build clarity around things that may be impeding educator capacity. We're going to be thinking about how we can create this process of change over time so it doesn't feel like such an event. But tonight, what I really want to focus on is that insight piece, because that's the place that you're always going to start. So I've told you, you have two different types of insight. You have your own perspective as an instructional leader, and then there's the perspective of staff and teachers and maybe other people too. So here's what I want to say about that. Everyone's perspective is different, and everyone's perspective is their own reality. So with that in mind, there are perspectives that you are having that the teachers are not experiencing and having, but their perspective is their reality. So when they start to feel like this is hard and I don't want to do it, it's because their perspective is, I'm about to have to give up ownership of something that I've been doing for an extended period of time, and whatever is to come is unknown to me, right? And you are thinking, I'm seeing all of these classrooms and I know what we collectively need to do in order to best support our students. And there's really sometimes no middle ground unless you can gain insight. So here's what I'm going to suggest that you do to gain insight. I'm going to suggest that when you get started with whatever the change is, or hopefully very far in advance before you initiate this change, you have feedback meetings or listening tours where you are just listening and you are gaining perspective and their insight, because their insight is going to help you determine next steps. So that is the place that you start. It is the place that's going to give you traction to be able to creep forward. And I do say creep forward because change is a process, right? And it takes time and effort. And yes, you are going to feel like you're taking 2 steps forward and 3 or 4 or 5 steps back. But that is okay because you are just in the valley. But when you're in this valley, remember, your insight is not the only perspective that matters. We really have to gain perspective from other people in order for us all to move up to confidence. So let me pause for just a moment. And I want to say that we will not all be on this graphic or on this roller coaster of emotions at the same point at the same time. So some people may be experiencing hope in the beginning, while some people will move into insight. Some people will move up to feeling confident and then back down into insight. Or you may have people who just remain in that valley for a long period of time and never gain confidence to fully move forward with whatever the change is. You can help that with these feedback meetings and listening tours. So I want to tell you what this sounds like before you get started. Go ahead and think about what it is that you really are wanting people to change. What is the change that needs to go into effect in your in your district or on your campus? Put that in the comments. Let me know, what is the change that you really feel like needs to happen that people are resistant to? Put that in the chat. And you might be thinking, like, it could be they are resistant to a new curriculum. They're resistant to this program that we're trying to utilize. They are resistant to PLCs. They are resistant to trying some instructional strategies instead of going to teachers pay teachers immediately. They are resistant to implementing some small group instructional practices. Whatever it is, I want to see in the comments what they are resistant to or overwhelmed by, because truly it could be that they're just experiencing overwhelm. So I'm seeing PLC and collaboration, implementation of some curriculum and programs with fidelity. And I want to be careful with that word, fidelity, because here's where insight matters. Their insight or their perspective could be that you're saying, or as leaders, we're saying we're going to implement this with fidelity. What they're hearing is, I have to implement every little piece of this exactly as it is stated. There's too much, there's not enough time, and I just can't do it. So that's where the overwhelm is coming in. We have these varied definitions of what fidelity is. So while leaders may think we really just want them to implement this with integrity and try new things and take risks and see what is going to work best with the curriculum that we have, what they're hearing is could be something very different. So Amanda said they're resistant to all of those that you mentioned. Mainly the new curriculum is the issue, and then new instructional strategies. Okay, regardless of what it is, if you have not taken time to have some listening tours and feedback meetings with them to gain some insight and identify what it is that's at the root cause of this resistance or this overwhelm, then there is no way to move forward, right? It's almost like they feel like you're moving forward without them in mind. We're just moving the bus forward with them, off the bus, on the bus, it doesn't matter, but we're moving forward. And that's when they start to dig those heels in, right? They're like, no way. I am not moving forward with this. I don't like it. I don't understand it. Well, we don't know exactly where all of those feelings are coming from unless we are just listening to them and asking really strategic questions. So when you begin to roll out this new thing, you are going to try your best to meet with either individual teachers or team teachers, and be careful and cautious about how you are preparing yourself to respond to the conversations that are had. Because chances are, if they are highly resistant and they are overwhelmed, their emotions are going to come out in those conversations, and their emotions are going to override what is truly going on in their minds about this new thing, okay, about what it is that they're resistant to. But you can meet with them and say, I really want to know what your initial thoughts are about this thing, about PLCs. Tell me about your experience with this so far. What is it that is most hopeful for you about moving forward? What is it that's causing you the most overwhelm or anxiety? What is it that we have done that's been supportive? What is it that you wish we would have done that would be supportive? Okay, so you just continue to ask questions, and the only thing that you are doing is listening and taking in. The one thing that you are not doing is trying to respond to justify. That is not what we're doing. We're just gaining insight. And as we're asking these questions and we're writing down their responses or taking note of their responses, we're letting them know we're going to take everything that you've said and we're going to really think about the patterns and consistencies across these different conversations that we've had. And that's going to help us to decide what our next step is with this thing, with this curriculum or with this PLC. Now, it's going to be important for you to say, this doesn't mean that we're not going to implement it. That's really not a choice. And they do need to know. They need to know what is a choice and what is not a choice. But we can take this insight that we've gained from you and decide what's going to be our best first next step. That is going to be so helpful for you and for them. For you, it's going to give you clarity about the direction that you're headed and how you're going to move people forward. It's also going to be helpful for them because their voices are being heard. You are empowering them and giving them ownership of this change. You are giving them the opportunity to share what's on their mind, and you're going to try to respond to that with the next step forward. So tell me in the comments what your approach has been. Have you had listening tours or feedback meetings where you are just gaining insight and you told your people, we're just going to gain insight today about your thoughts and feelings about this curriculum, this program, this new thing, this change that is going on? Put either a yes or a no if that has or has not happened. And I also want to know if you could help people to not feel so overwhelmed, and if you could help them to not be so resistant by gaining insight and allowing them to be part of the change story instead of feeling like they're left behind, would you want that? Is that something that you would want? Is that something that you would want to experience? Put a yes in the comments if that's like something you would totally want to experience for yourself and for your teachers, right? Okay, so I'm seeing no, that people have not had listening tours and feedback meetings. Yes, but only a few and not with everyone. And then Alana, you said teachers came back this week, so no. So here's what I'm going to say about those comments. There are a couple of different ways you can go about engaging in these conversations with people. The way that I have found that is the most appropriate and intentional is having like secured meetings about this thing, about this change, and letting them know the only thing that we're doing during these meetings is having some vulnerable, open conversation about this change. So they know how to prepare for that, or they know what it's going to be about. You might even lay out the questions ahead of time and lay some ground rules. Like, I'm going to take 5 minutes of your time. In these 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you these questions. I'm going to ensure that we do these things and avoid these things. And then we're going to take all of the responses and think about what we're noticing so we can help everyone to move forward successfully. So we're gonna stop there. And I just want you to know that this is one step, right? Like in the title, I said the one place you can start when change feels impossible. It is gaining insight, because you cannot move forward without the insight, right? And you will come back to gaining insight again and again and again throughout this change process. But it is the one place to start. You're not just gaining insight from other instructional leaders. So it could be campus administrators or district administrators, students, parents, community members. And you're really trying to decide, if we're hearing all of this, then what? If this, then this, right? So put in the chat what you have found to be most useful in this conversation. And I'm going to leave in the chat a link to the Clarity Cycle Mastermind, because if you are thinking, okay, I feel like I can do this first step and start in the place of gaining insight, and you're ready to go to the next step, then you are going to want to join the Clarity Cycle Mastermind cohort for the fall, because we are going to go through all of the steps that you need to take in order to truly get the ball rolling and get people on board and get them to become a willing part of the change story. So I'm going to put that in the chat. It is Clarity Cycle. I'm actually going to put it on the banners too. So it is catchingupwithkc.com/Clarity Cycle. And I would love to hear from you if you are interested in that, or if you're thinking, I'm not quite sure what it is. Let's get on a discovery call together and let's talk about what this change is that you're trying to get teachers on board with. And let's talk about the resistance that you're experiencing or the overwhelm that they're experiencing. And let me coach you through what the next step is completely for free. And then if we decide Clarity Cycle could be a great thing for you to implement, then we can talk about that then. Okay. So I am seeing people say, like, I like the idea of giving them questions ahead of time. Yes. If you wanted to do a survey, you could do a survey as well. I hope you guys got that website. I'm trying to put it in the comments, but it's not quite working. If someone could put this link in the comments, that would be super helpful. Okay, guys. So we are going to close out this conversation. And I hope that you will go to catchingupwithkc.com/Clarity Cycle to learn more about the mastermind cohort that's happening this fall. You're going to want to get in pretty quickly. The doors are going to close in just a couple of weeks. And I want you to be there to help your campus get on board and not experience so much overwhelm and resistance. All right, guys, I will catch you next time. We will be visiting in a couple of weeks. I will have a guest on, and I'm super excited about that. I hope you enjoy your evening and have a great week. See you later. Hey guys, I want to give a huge shout out to you for tuning into today's Change Catalyst conversation. I would love for you to do me two solid favors. Number one, if you have enjoyed this or any other Change Catalyst conversation, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I've got a lot of great content and guests coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number two, if you are thinking of a friend or colleague who could benefit from this show, share it with them. The only way to make change happen is through a multiplier effect. And you can be a multiplier by sharing this show. Until next time, I want you to go off and do the great things that Change Catalysts do.